Welcome to Unarmored Talk, where we remove the armor, have real conversations, and strengthen how we think and respond in life. Today, I am joined not just by a guest, but a friend, someone who I've served with before in the Marines, and we're still friends to this day. His name is Adam Walker, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant of 25 years. He was a Marine infantryman. He's did multiple deployments. I've deployed with him, but also to include I did not deploy with him in Iraq. Did 3 tours in Iraq, and he's got some amazing recognitions. He was a Marine Corps Gazette, Leatherneck magazine. He's been there. The War Horse. I mean, this guy's been all over when it comes to publications, and he's received an honorable mention in 2022 in the Leatherneck Writing Contest, and he did. I mean, this guy again. I know him personally. I'm gonna give him a chance to talk, but I'm not done. But the reason for this episode, and by the way, about 3 years ago, he was on the show, so this is his second appearance. But the reason why I invited Adam back on the show, because he's a recent author, self-published author, if you will. His book is titled Laughing and Crying as a U.S. Marine Authentic Short Stories. And I'm telling you guys, I'm going to make sure y'all can see this. I am telling you, this is one of the best. Let me get it up to the camera. This is one of the best military books that Mario Pierre feels, that's me, have read in the last 100 million years. Adam, my man, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mario. I really appreciate it. And it's good to see you again, even virtually. And I'm sure we'll see each other in a few days as we gather with our brothers, the Graybeards. But I appreciate the chance to come on and chat with you again and talk about the book.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, I got his book, and in a couple of days, he's going to personally sign it with crayons. No, I'm just joking. He's going to personally sign it for me. I just told listeners and viewers a little bit about you. Let's just jump right into it. I mean, everyone, if you haven't got a chance to get a copy of his book, you got to get one. If you served in the military and the Marines, definitely get a copy. Before we get into a couple of things about the book, how can people get a copy?
Really anywhere books are sold. So if you just look for Laughing and Crying as a U.S. Marine, then you can find it. It's sold on Amazon, it's sold on Barnes & Noble. If you go on my social media, there's a link to buy it directly from the distributor. So you can find it almost anywhere.
Yeah, and how can people find you as well? I know you write a lot, man. You produce some really quality stuff. So how can they find you on social media?
Just look for the handle, Take It on the Left Foot.
You guys heard of take it on the left foot, not the right foot. You might have to do some push-ups. Left foot, step off of that left foot. Let's get into it. I had a chance to read it. It's amazing. I was laughing so hard. My wife was like, "What the hell is going on, Mario?" And there's some silent moments, and it's going right to the title, laughing and crying. It's very relevant, very accurate. What about the journey? I mean, you produced this amazing book, but it wasn't done overnight.
No, it wasn't done overnight. As a matter of fact, it was a 5-year project. So I initially, the idea was planted years ago in my early 20s as a young NCO. I stumbled on a series of books by a Marine named Gene Duncan, and he had served from 1950 to 1979. And he wrote 4 books of sea stories. And the first 2 were called Green Side Out and Brown Side Out. And they were all short stories. And almost all of them were humorous, but every once in a while, there would be some ones that were just a little bit, they would tug at your heartstrings, him losing a young Marine in Vietnam, something like that. So that idea really captivated me. I liked his wit and humor and his method of storytelling. And so the seed was planted many years ago. And I thought maybe one day I'll do something like that. And then when I retired, I started writing in different places, some of the publications that you mentioned earlier. And then I just decided, you know what? I want to write a book of short stories. I want to have 50 short stories, and I want to put it out the year that I turn 50. And that just kind of seemed like a nice goal. So it was a 5-year project when I actually began it. I gave myself 4 years to write the stories and 1 year to figure out how to publish. And kind of because I knew nothing about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my method is I kept a spreadsheet. I'd always think of funny stories or poignant stories I wanted to write. So I always had a spreadsheet. And sometimes I would just write, something would jog my memory and I would jot it down. And then when I get back to my computer, I would add it to the spreadsheet. So this thing just grew and grew. So I always had a list of things I could write about. And then what I started doing over that 4-year period is every 3 months I went camping by myself. I would set up a real comfortable campsite. I used to go backpacking a lot, but as I got older, my joints started hurting. I was like, man, I could probably be out in the woods a little bit more comfortable. So I got this big old tent, a cot, a field desk, and I would go to North Carolina State Park and set up a campsite. And I would spend 4 days and 3 nights. It would take me the first 24 hours just to get into the headspace and kind of
Hmm.
unwind and unplug. And then I would go hiking during the day. And I don't wear headphones or nothing like that. I'm just in the woods with my thoughts and clear my head. And then I would look at my list. And while I'm hiking for a couple hours, kind of the juices start flowing. Then I'd get back to camp and I'd crank out like 2 or 3 stories. And over a camping trip, I would write anywhere between 4 and 8 stories over those weekends. And so I did that for 4 years. And I went summer, spring, winter, fall. It was about 4 times a
Mm.
year. And it really worked for me. There were a couple of times though that my confidence would just plummet. Being a
Yeah.
human being, I was pretty confident when I sat on the project. And, I set this timeline, but then every once in a while, I would look at how many stories I had left, and I was like, I'm not going to make it. And it's my own timeline, so there really was no pressure except what I put on myself. Or other times I'd read a story and I would think, man, the quality's not there, and I would just kind of lose confidence. But then I was like, no, Adam, stick to the plan and do it. And
Yeah.
some people had advised me to write like a memoir, but all the GWAT veterans, not all, most of the kind of GWAT veterans who are writing books are writing memoirs or they're writing leadership books. And I didn't want to do either one of those mediums. And I got nothing, against people that do that. They've actually influenced me quite a bit, seeing their examples and hearing their stories. Because as much as I'm a writer, I'm more a reader. And when I read other people's stories, that just helps stimulate me with my own method of storytelling. But I said, I listened to the people's advice, but I said, no, I feel pretty confident. I got to do it my way. And so
Yeah.
I worked through it. And then I had to figure out how to publish, because when you're quote unquote nobody, it's not like, you know, uh, publishers are looking for me. So how do you get published? And I did some research all along this time that I was trying to figure things out. So I said, well, I could pay money and hire an agent, but then I'm paying somebody to find a publisher who then I have to negotiate with. And I didn't like that. And this book has never been about making a profit or making money.
Right.
So I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of money for an agent to then find a publisher. Then there's another medium called hybrid publishing, and that's kind of where you pay a publisher, and but then you have to give up a creative control, right? So I'd pay them a couple $1,000s, but then they would decide the medium, the format, and then I would
Mm.
still have to do a lot of the marketing myself. And I had two offers for hybrid deals. And it was kind of enticing to me because then you get like the editing and some of the kind of technical things that I don't know anything about. But I couldn't give up any creative control. I knew what I want the book to look like, the physical
Right.
design of it. I didn't want to do an ebook or paperback and hardback. I only wanted one medium. And so I was pretty stubborn about this. So I said, well, let me explore how to self-publish. And then I was very satisfied with it. But it did add in some extra steps. I had to find a proofreader. I had to find an editor. I had to find someone to do artwork. And so I had to basically kind of outsource, a couple of these little things because when you write your own stuff and then you've seen it for years and years, you can't see typos.
Hmm.
Every writer has their own kind of quirks. Like I use too many commas, or I'm long-winded, or I write the way I tell stories, and sometimes that's not readable. So, but through just networking, I found all the people I needed to help me, and it finally all came together. And so I was
Man.
really, really pleased with it.
That is cool. And you guys heard it. First of all, Adam said he waited till he's 50. He looks like he's about 30. I mean, I'm gonna talk crap to him because him and I are friends.
I was a
But
late bloomer.
but but again, to be intentional, man, to go, all right, I'm gonna give myself 5 years, 4 years to kind of get my vision, my thoughts out on paper. Then at 1 year, how am I gonna publish this? And so for those folks out there that you have an experience or there's something vision that you want to transfer to a book of that sort. I hope you learn from this episode that it's okay to take time, and it's okay, like Adam said, to put self-imposed frameworks and timelines on yourself. Before I get into some of the humor of it, and we discuss a couple of things, I do want to say, for the families that lost the loved ones in the book. For you, Adam, I'm thankful to God, even from our first episode, that you did survive. Your injuries. I know you still battle with those daily, but my heart and prayers goes out to just not Adam and everyone else impacted by the loss and the continued separation, if you will, from those Marines that's in this book that we lost. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. But now to a funny one, and I'm just going to give you all a little bit. Man, that boot camp one. I mean, there's a lot of short stories, but everyone, you gotta get a copy of this book. If you don't, shame on you.
Yeah.
Don't give them the details, but the one where you said, "Oh, I gotta confess. I gotta
Oh
confess.
yeah.
I
Yeah. There's this.
when I was
Yeah.
13."
Yeah. So, and to kind of give some context to the listeners, the stories aren't exactly chronological, but they kind of are.
Hmm.
And I basically grouped them into three sections. The first section is called Growing, and it's kind of being a young Marine that starts in boot camp or being a young PFC and a Lance Corporal. And then there's a section called Grown, and that's
Hmm.
like when I'm an NCO and a staff NCO, and most of the stories from combat are there. And then the last section is called Gray. And that's kind of when I was senior enlisted in some of the encounters I had. So there's a little bit of a progression, but the story you mentioned is Marines are familiar with the moment of truth. And that's like one of your first day or so in boot camp when they scare you to try to convince you to confess anything that you maybe withheld, that you didn't tell your recruiter about. And usually it's, maybe someone had some legal involvement or they use drugs or they try to conceal a medical issue. And I turned 18 and I was in boot camp less than 30 days later. I'd only graduated high school 2 days before boot camp. And so anyway, at the moment of truth, I sprang up to confess. And then they took me in the back and they're like, "What is it, boy?" And I stole a candy bar when I was 13 years old. And anyway, it just pours out of me. And I tell them, like, I stole it. And they told me it would be expunged from my record when I turned 18. I turned 18 last month. And then uh, the story is humorous because in light of what could have been confessed or, it wasn't that big a deal. Obviously stealing was wrong as a 13-year-old kid, but I thought they were going to send me to the brig. I thought they were going to kick me out of the Marine Corps. And this was like my one shot to make something out of myself. So it was a very emotional event at the time. But then later, as I, stayed in the Marine Corps and became a recruiter, I look back and I can see how kind of absurd, this situation was.
now you now you're looking back at 50, you're going, okay. I mean, I was 18 and I was scared as
Yeah.
heck, but
Yeah.
and I love how you design the book into three frameworks, like you had just mentioned, and it's easy to follow. The other thing I love about laughing and crying as a U.S. Marine is it's applicable to any human. And I'm glad you didn't put lessons learned, because when you read this book, and you don't have to be military to read it. You can be a doctor, lawyer, I don't care. All the folks who listen to an Armor Talk podcast over the past 6 years, pick it up, get the copy. You can learn. And the beauty of it is you can read your short stories and then you can self reflect. You got to self reflect, though, everyone. And you
Yeah.
can self reflect in your own life and experience, and you can learn from that. Was that in your initial thought process to be able to achieve that?
I did want to make it too accessible to. I wanted it to be kind of. My goal was for this to kind of be a cult classic within the Marine Corps, but not just for Marines, right? I wanted to be accessible to family members or to young people who were thinking about joining the Marines. So I made two conscious decisions. One was to minimize the use of acronyms, to try to be
Hmm.
very plain language, and the other part was to not write it with a bunch of profanity. And in fact, if I can read just a little excerpt, this is in a note from the author. It says, "Finally, Marines often use the salty language of pirates and prisoners. Profanity is so common, the absence of its use would feel like a foreign tongue. Nevertheless, I have attempted to convey these stories without employing the fighting man's prevalent vulgarity. Perhaps in such a manner, these stories can be read not only by generations of Marines, but also by their families."
Hmm.
And I wanted it to be accessible to other people. And I've been sharing with folks that my goals for the book are threefold. One, it's built into the title. I want them to laugh and I want them to cry.
Hmm.
And when I say cry, to shed a tear as we remember the Marines we lost or the difficult times that our Marines went through. But the third was I wanted the reader, the Marine veteran reader, to have memories of their own stories stirred up that they will then begin to tell their families. And I'm hearing reports of this already. They say, "Yeah, I'm reading the story," and they're laughing and they're saying, "Hey, dad," or "Hey, sweetheart,
Hmm.
what's so funny?" And they say, "Oh, man." And they relate the story But then they could take the next step and they say, and when I was in, and they start to tell their own stories because Marines freely tell stories with one another, but sometimes we don't tell those same stories to our family and the people that are in our lives now. And I think that's really important.
That is so true. And now, I'm a grandpa now, and my world is my granddaughter, and I know one day she's going to sit on Papa's lap, and I tell you, I'm not lying. I will have this with me, and I know she's going to be like, "So, Papa, can you tell me some story?" Well, let's read this first, and then let's talk about that. And I love how your approach to put it in plain language. By the way, listeners and viewers, I served with Adam Walker, Master Gunnery Sergeant at the time, and the way he writes in this book is the way he is. I mean, he wasn't running around Fourth Marines or Third Marine Division in Okinawa just cussing everybody out and using profanity every second of the day. So it's not like he changed his character and changed who he is in this book. That's why I love the word authentic, because this is you. And I love your photo, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Looks like
Oh, can I
five
tell you
years
about
ago.
can I tell you about the design?
Yeah.
So the design on the cover. So there was a photograph of me as a sergeant in 1998 in a float book from Okinawa when my battalion commander was a guy by the name of Joe Dunford, by the way. And so that it was just a random sketch. And this was before we had digital cameras. So it was literally like someone called my name and I turned and there's kind of that photo. So when I started doing this, I found a Marine Corps combat artist by the name of Mike Reynolds. And so on social media, he goes by the handle 40 Mike Art. And
Hmm.
when I saw his content, I knew that number one, he's a very talented individual, but also like he had a passion for the Marine Corps and for storytelling. So I said, man, this is the guy I want. And 2 years ago, when I partnered with Leatherneck magazine and started writing this column called Lessons from the Smoke Pit, I reached out to Mike Reynolds and asked him to do a sketch for the Smoke Pit, and he did it in 24 hours. We had never even
Wow.
we had never even met before, and it was perfect. So then the following year, as the book was coming to development, I said, "Hey, Mike, I want to design," and so he did this sketch for me. I wanted it based off the photograph. So, and underneath the dust jacket is a tan version of the book, and that's where the sketch came from. But I
Right.
wanted a dust jacket because I mentioned those books before, brown side out, green side out. So with this dust jacket, I got a little bit of brown side and green side. And this green, the border on it, if you look closely, it mirrors my field desk, the desk I'm sitting at right now, an old school, like 1970s version of a field desk. And that's where this green comes from. And this design was done by my daughter. And so, very collaborative effort. And then one of my other daughter's friends is a young lady that lives in the local area who has a passion for videography and photography. So she did the author photo, and then she put together the promotional video, which is out on YouTube. So if you enter the name of the book into YouTube, you'll see a 90-second promotional video. And so my daughter's friend put that video together. Her name is Alicia. Alicia Creates. And so it was really good to put the artistic touch on this to add to the storytelling and to bring it to life.
Well, and I'll make sure when I publish your episode, the link will come up in a banner. So that way, people, if they want to click on it at this moment, they can. Adam, I would love to have you on the show for forever, like I do all the other guests. But you know the deal, man. I
Yep.
mean, I could just like all the other guests. I mean, you and I could talk for about another 6 days
Yes, sir.
over a cup of coffee and conversations. Uh, if you had to give one piece of advice to any veteran or any professional or any person out there that is considering taking their own unique, authentic experiences and trans archiving them in a book, what would you give them?
I would say be yourself and trust your gut because a lot of people are going to give you advice about how they think it should be done. But if you're a creative person, you probably have a stubborn streak and you got to do it your way. That's the way only way that you'll be happy with it and you'll be at peace with it. So yeah, follow your gut and do it your way.
Everybody again laughing and crying as a U.S. Marine. You got to see him, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant Adam Walker. He's got 7,000 years in the Marines. He's been retired for 5,500 years. He's one of the best I've ever served with. And man, I can't wait to see you in a couple of days, man.
Thanks, brother. Looking forward to seeing you too.
Yes, sir. Well, everyone, until next time, you guys know the deal. But before I let you go, I do want to reference. Yeah, oh yeah, I'm not going to let you get off this easy. It was August. I just want to bring it up, everyone. August of 2023 was the first time I had Adam Walker on the show. And if you guys want to check out that episode, I'm looking over here at that episode. It was August of 2023 where he was on the show. It's called "Devastating Combat Injuries Didn't Stop This Marine from Leading." You want to check that episode out as well. It's actually part of the crime. I mean, it was a very touching episode. But again, check that one out on YouTube or the audio platform. Are you okay with me, Adam? Give me a little shout out on that one.
100%. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Well, everyone, again, thank you for your continued support. Almost going on 6 years, but I want you guys to stay unarmored, stay authentic, stay mentally fit, and God bless you all. Thanks,
all right.
Adam.
All right.